Bader Paramount. He's a sociology professor at Morris County Community College, and he's going to go over with us all the problems and give us the solutions, right?
Hopefully.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about you, and perhaps you give us the background about your family and
Sure.
why you came here.
Sure. Well, welcome on campus. This is the County College of Morris in Randolph, and welcome to the Campus Tea Party. My name is Bader Karmoop, and I am one of 9 children born overseas. Both my parents were born in Israel, and I was born in Jordan. Came to the U.S. at a fairly young age. Education was always an important part in our family. My father couldn't read or write English, but he always made sure whenever he came home, he always asked, did you do your homework? Did you do your homework? So education was always a very important part of our upbringing.
And you say you went to the public schools?
Yes.
Okay.
In the United States, yes.
In the United States, okay.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, what made you just decide to want to become a professor?
Well, I really enjoy teaching, and you know, the beautiful part about teaching at a college level, every semester you have a whole new fresh group of students, and the students' unique personalities contributes to the class. You know, their input, their life experiences, and I'm noticing more and more that students are, you know, they come from various ethnic and social backgrounds. The youngest student I've had was 18. The oldest I've ever had was 73. I think she was 73 or 74. So I got students from the whole wide spectrum of age, social class, ethnic, religious background. So it's beautiful to see that. And here at County College of Morris, in Morris County, New Jersey, you really have a nice mixture of people from all over.
I would say that most Americans feel that our educational system is failing them somewhat. Both the higher and the K through 12.
Yeah, well, the higher is failing because the K through 12 is failing. It's really a consequence thereof. And it's not just a feeling, I believe it is a fact. If you look at how the United States is comparing to other nations around the world, we find that we're somewhere in the area of 17, 18, 19 ranked out of 50-some countries in math, reading, and science. So we're really lacking behind a lot of other countries, although we are spending more than any country in the world on education. And New Jersey in particular is spending more than any state in the country. On average, New Jersey spends about $17,000 per year per child to educate here in New Jersey in the public school system. And we find that, you know, our performance compared to internationally, we're not where we used to be. So throwing money at the problem may, as we'll find out in a little bit, may not be the solution. There's a deeper problem that we need to address first. So yeah, we are lacking behind.
And so when you were talking about some solutions, what might be one solution?
Well, in many countries around the world, when they get teachers, they treat them well, pay them well, and the teachers have an enormous amount of respect from the students and from the families. Education is taken far more seriously. It used to be taken more seriously in the United States in the past, and still taken more seriously internationally around the world. So I believe we need to return teachers to that level of respect that they rightfully deserve. And we also need to make sure that they're well paid, well cared for, and their opinions and input is well respected. And also at the same time, when we have a bad teacher among a group of good teachers, we need to have the ability to remove that bad teacher a lot quicker than we currently do. Because a bad teacher is bad for everybody. You know, we have various states, like in New York, they have something called the rubber room, where a bad teacher can stay teaching or stay in the school system, and the school has to replace that teacher and still pay them both. So it ends up costing an enormous amount. A bad teacher in a school makes the rest of us look bad. So it's in our advantage to remove them, absolutely.
In theory, I guess that relates to tenure, because tenure makes
Correct.
it difficult to get rid of bad teachers.
Absolutely. Unions represent the interests of its members, and that's teachers. Unions do not represent the interests of the students, and that's where parents have to come in. I believe the second solution is to empower parents. Parents need to feel that they're a part of the solution and a part contributing to school input. We also need to make sure parents have the power to empower teachers, to empower parents by giving them parental rights to go to schools that they feel are, if they're failing, to leave that school and take their children to schools that are more successful. So giving parents rights to remove their children out of failing schools, taking them to another school, is one way to empower parents. Also to empower parents by giving them more input in the school curriculum. Parents should have a right to look at the textbooks, should be able to add to the discussion in the classroom with their children. An enormous amount of parents complain that they feel isolated from the teaching process. We need to incorporate and include parents and see them as a partner in education, not someone who has outsourced education to the institutions and now they're detached. Parents should also stand up and partake in that. You know, some parents they do feel like they've outsourced the education to the school and they've become almost hands-off, that it's not their job anymore. No, we need to go back to realizing that parents still need to be parents in the educational aspect as well.
Right, and I know a lot of those parents, and I'm one of them, but I don't do that because I homeschool my kids.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But I can see the other parents, they're working 2 jobs, and it's tough, and so therefore they send the kids to school and they see it as a relief.
Sure.
And then when they come home from their jobs at night, they're tired.
Yeah.
So that's just an issue with the parents of today. But I know you also work with a fellow, his name is Israel Taldown.
Yes.
He is for free choice. Okay.
Parental rights, yes.
Parental rights,
yes,
right.
School choice.
And you guys had come up with the bill.
Well, Assemblyman Anthony Bucco of the 25th District, representing Morris and Somerset County, I believe, he has put out a bill, and when you see on the screen, it is known as Assembly 3875. The bill is properly called New Jersey Parental Rights and Property Reduction Act.
Okay. And so will that help the taxpayer as well? Because every time we talk about education, I see the taxpayer saying, oh, well, you guys already have our money.
Yeah.
Okay. And therefore, you know, come voting the budget, we always want to vote it down because you guys already have our money. That's what the taxpayers are saying.
Yeah.
So, and education is a cost.
Without a doubt. Earlier you were mentioning about parents working 2 jobs. And often you'll find parents are working 2 jobs and weekends to be able to pay the bills. And a big chunk of the bills are property taxes. You'll find that property taxes in New Jersey are exceptionally high. And the biggest part of property taxes is school taxes. If you see on the board behind me the listing of some towns' percentage of their property taxes that is school taxes, you'll find in some towns it's as high as 60, 70, 72%. For example, I think I wrote on the board Vernon around 59%. You have Branchville at 70-some% of the property taxes is school tax. So a very large chunk of your property taxes go towards the school funding. Some towns in New Jersey are unbelievably low. What ends up happening is they're taking money from some towns and sending them what's known as Abbott District towns, sending that unfair funding to other towns. So for example, Branchville, I believe on the board we had said it was 78% of their property taxes is school tax, where in Camden it is somewhere around 19%. And you have Newark at 31%. So you have towns, the percentage of their property taxes that goes to school is very low. Why is it so low? Because they're getting the money from other towns. So places like Branchville, like Vernon, like Randolph, right here in Morris County, the area we're in right now, the property taxes are high, the percentage of school taxes are high because we have to make up, because we're sending an enormous amount of our money to other towns while their percentages are lower. So the unfair funding of schools is what's really hurting New Jersey property owners and taxpayers. So another bill that was put out there by State Senator Mike Doherty of the 23rd District. Senator Doherty has a fair funding bill where the idea here is to charge the same amount per child. The dollar follows the child and not the school districts. For example, most of New Jersey the average is $17,000 to educate a child per year. 17,600, I believe, is the exact number. But in some areas, it's as high as 24,000. In some areas, why is it so high? Because there's an enormous amount of cost and expense in administration as well. So what ends up happening is in these schools, we have very high, very expensive education that is not yielding results, that is good results in some of those towns. So we need to fair fund schools. The unfair redistribution of tax dollars for education is what's hurting many families in New Jersey.
Now, suppose I want to send my son to, let's say, Mountain Lakes High School, okay, and I'm from Parsippany. Okay, what would be the process then?
Is that to a private school or a public school?
Public school.
Public school. Well, Governor Christie, what he has been able to do in small areas, allowed parents to transfer children from within the same district, from one school to another. Not yet are we able to transfer them from district to district. But what we have Bucco's bill, that's the Assembly 3875 that we were just mentioning earlier. If that bill passes, then we would be able to you'd be able to take your child from one public school that might be failing and send them to either another public school or a private school. The idea here is if we have a school that is failing, to continue sending children to that failing school, all we're going to end up getting is more failing results. So competition, just like in the business world, is the best way to improve a product and lower the price. So we create competition in education by giving parents the power to take their kids out of a failing school and put them in a school of their choice. Up to a certain amount, the tax dollars, the tax dollars would follow the child. If the child is going to school A, then that school will get it. If the child is going to school B, then that school will get it, up to a certain capped amount.
So I could transfer my son to the other high school in Parsippany? And
That's
the
correct.
town would have to cover the cost?
Up to a capped amount of, I believe, $7,500.
Okay.
Correct.
And then is the parent offered, in case they still want to go through it and the price is higher, is the parent offered to pay for, at least offer the choice to pay for the difference?
Correct. Let's say I want to take my son from public school to a private school. The private school costs more. The public school will only transfer $7,500. The rest I have to pay out of my pocket. If the cost of the second school is lower than $7,500, then the taxpayers are only going to transfer the amount of the school up to $75. If it's less than $75, it stays with the district. So the savings ends up staying with the school, and half of it is applied to lower property taxes.
Okay, so now I get a whole synopsis of the thing. I'm actually an advocate for something like this, and as you know, I homeschool my kids. And,
Right.
We weren't offered any payment from the state.
Correct. Yeah, now you have to actually double pay. If I want to send my children to a religious or a private school of any sort, I have to pay the tuition for that school along with my property taxes to pay tuition for the public school that I'm not utilizing. I'm actually now paying for both. So the Bucco's bill, it creates not only competition in order to improve the product, but at the same time it treats the taxpayer more fairly and it empowers the parents. Why is that important? Because we find that when our children are trained, they have a better education, they're more ready for a workplace positioning afterwards. It's more likely for them to get a job as opposed to unemployment and therefore leading to maybe delinquency and crime. So it has a larger societal, big picture view to make sure that we're educating for the future jobs rather than children who are not performing up to par and then not able to get in the job market.
And it's the same thing, you're also educating them better, and so when they go into colleges, universities,
Absolutely.
the grades would be a lot higher.
Absolutely. In one of my classes, I think I mentioned that to you in one of our previous interviews, I send out a test from the 1800s, a 8th grade exit exam from the 1800s, and I pass it around the classroom, and many of the students today in college look at the 8th grade exit exam from the 1800s, and many of them would not be able to pass it today, and we're in college. So what have we done is, unfortunately, what we've done is kept on lowering the standard so more students pass, rather than kept the standard and lifted the students to achieve that standard. So what we end up doing, unfortunately, is when they graduate, they're not really prepared. They're not really ready for the job market outside, and they're not performing up to par.
Wow, you're telling me it's great. I just want to bring up one other aspect.
Sure.
You mentioned the unions, and you're correct that they're pretty much for the members.
Right.
How do they play into something like this?
Well, first let me say that I am a card-carrying, dues-paying union member.
Right.
So I speak as a union member, but in order to solve a problem, you really got to look at everything and look at it fairly and honestly. It would be a mistake to say that teachers' unions are advocating for the children, because they're advocating for their members, which are the teachers, not the students.
Right.
We need someone else to advocate for those students. So maybe a separate union or parents that advocate for the children. What ends up happening is we end up, as a teachers' union, they end up advocating for whatever is in the best interest of the teacher, the teachers' union, and making sure that the dues are paid to the union, making sure the union advocates and represents the teachers. So it becomes a circle that often does not include what's best for the child.
Right, and I don't see them personally interested in something like this, but as a parent, I'm very much for this.
The bill,
Yes.
the Bucos bill. No, I believe unions would oppose such a bill. Why? Because often what ends up happening, if you're going to take your child to a private school, that private school often is not unionized. It's not a union institution. So what they're afraid of is that teachers that are unionized in public schools may experience a drop and maybe layoffs is what they're worried about, rather than realizing that this is an opportunity to improve the quality, to improve the product, to improve the quality of the teachers that we're getting. In some countries around the world, they choose their teachers from the top 10% of the graduating class. In the United States, we get teachers whomever want to get a teacher certification, and in some school districts, they're not even asking for the proper teacher certification, they're getting alternative certifications. So you don't even need to be diplomaed in the field you're teaching. So we're not, in order for us to really increase the product quality, is we need to also make sure we're not only treating our teachers with the respect that they rightfully deserve, but also getting the top of the class, the graduating class. So we should be recruiting from the top 10% of the graduating classes to attract them to become teachers. But often, unfortunately, in the United States today, teachers don't have the respect that they should. So people are saying, well, why should I become a teacher? Unfortunately, society doesn't hold education and educational institutions in that high esteem. In other countries around the world, they do.
As opposed to if you're a baseball player and you get paid
Yeah,
1.2 million.
yeah. Probably per game. Yeah, no, you're right.
Wow.
Yeah.
But let's go back to talk about Parsippany a minute, because I'm from there. I can tell you my son would have preferred to go to the other high school because they have better football team and all that.
Sure.
But I want to tell you something else that goes on there. I've gone to the Board of Ed meetings, and it's always the same people that go.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's like the same group of, I guess, activists who are down there. And it just doesn't change for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's because the parents are busy
Sure.
or whatever.
There might be apathy at play. People feel as they really can't make a difference anyway. But you're right. I think we need more parents' involvement.
That's why I think these school boards get away with a lot of stuff that they do, because nobody goes to the meetings like that.
Yeah. I think they would have the view that if parents really cared, they'd be there. If parents really cared, or they really have a problem with whatever's being proposed, they would show up to the meetings. I think you're right. Just like in any other form of, you go to your local town council, often when they're meeting, there's only a handful of people in the audience. Same thing, I think we just outsource. And when we outsource education, for example, we kind of leave it alone and say, okay, we've outsourced it, it'll take care of itself. But we need to really realize if we're going to improve education, we need to be a part of it. As parents, we need to be very involved in it.
And so when I used to go all the time. And
So you were an activist?
yes, and a lot of parents knew that, and I would find out things, and even with the curriculum, and even with my son's curriculum, I would look at the pages, see what they're teaching, and,
Sure.
and if I object, the teacher's going to get a no. But when I was doing that, a lot of the parents did pick up on that, and they sort of sent like an email list around. They said, you go to board ed and just tell us what's happening, tell us how we can help.
Right.
And they would say to me, because their time is short, and that's what was happening. And I'm going to praise the Parsippany Board of Ed because we had some new people in there now, and they're reaching out to the parents now. And they're sending their notices around, and they're doing things to try to get some more involvement.
Right.
So they're going to get a plus on that, but that's only one school board.
Yeah.
Think of all the school boards that are
Sure.
out there right now where
Sure.
this is happening.
Sure. Some of them probably prefer that parents don't show up.
Right, so they can get this, that, and the other thing passed.
Yeah.
And,
No one will hold their feet to the fire.
So the new bill, then, would that also be regulated by the school board? Yes.
Well, the regulation would be that the institution you're taking your child to has to be on the approved list of schools. So
Okay.
generally that simply means if the school is already a certified accredited school, then it would be on the list. So it has to teach, the 3 R's, et cetera. It has to be able to do the academic aspect of education. It can't be just a football or a baseball school. It has to have, the math, the reading, the science, the history, et cetera.
Okay, so in other words, the bill also has a criteria
Yes.
to getting certified.
Yes.
And can you mention anything?
It's fairly simple. If the school is, if the school is already an accredited school, it would already be. So it would just have to go through the Department of Education's requirements, the simple requirements for education to make sure that there's, child safety, to make sure there's academic teaching, et cetera. So a fairly standard list of what is required for a school to be accredited. And then the child would have the option, the parent would have the option to take the child out of whatever school they're in to whatever school they choose. It could also be a religious institution as well.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So it's like a private institution?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so anything that meets that specific criteria?
Correct. Correct. So again, the idea here is to empower the parents.
Right.
To empower the parents and give them the true rights that they're entitled to, their God-given rights over how they're spending their tax dollars and how they're educating the child. If you have a program that is failing, why continue to keep investing in it and having a failed result at the end?
Right.
Either fix it, or let's not sacrifice this generation. Let's move them to a better school, and while we either fix it or replace it or whatever it takes, because if we go through one generation of a failed school, these are children. That's a whole generation. Not my son, not your son, not their son. We shouldn't allow a failed system to continue to fail while we pour more and more money into it. Money is absolutely not the solution to the problem, because we're already the most funded schools in the world are here in the United States.
Right, and that's what the taxpayers are always saying.
Yeah.
They're always asking, where do you
Absolutely.
get the money?
Unfortunately, we find an enormous amount of waste, enormous amount of duplicative services. For example, New Jersey has district superintendents and county superintendents. New Jersey has about 620 district superintendents, school districts. So each school district has a superintendent and a school principal, and in some of them, vice principals. So there's an enormous amount of administration. Some states, what they have done and what New Jersey is looking at doing is slowly to fade out the district superintendents and just have the county superintendents and the school superintendent, the school principals. So removing 620 district superintendents would save New Jersey approximately $150 to $200 million a year. 150 to 200 million per year, by removing duplicative superintendents from district to district. We already have county superintendents that oversees the whole county already. That's already in place. So we just have to make some tweaking as far as the county superintendents, instead of answering to and they would answer to the local boards of education, and every school would have a principal, which they already do. So we're able to save an enormous amounts of money. That's one way. You can save anywhere from 150 to 200 million per year over a 10-year period. That's an enormous amount of money.
It is.
That's just in a 10-year period, which is less than an academic lifetime of one student.
Now, is this anywhere else in the United States?
Oh yeah, many states have county districts as opposed to school districts. You know, like in New Jersey, we have 620 of them. We could only really, in essence, need 21 because we have 21 counties. We already have 21 county superintendents. So if we could just rely on them, and each one of those superintendents has a curriculum advisors. So, you know, we can rely on the county level, which many states have already done this and have saved an enormous amounts of money. So we don't have to invent the wheel here. It's been done already in other states. So we just have to look at how it's being done and apply it here in New Jersey. It can work because it works elsewhere. It can work here in New Jersey. The difference is we can save anywhere from 150 to 200 million per year. 10-year period, we're talking about, what's that come out to? $2 billion? That's an enormous amount of money.
Right, and I'm sure the taxpayer would
Oh,
like to
absolutely.
see something like that.
Absolutely.
Rather than, hey, my taxes are always going up.
Yeah.
You want to know why.
Yeah. In New Jersey, a big chunk, on average, statewide, on average, our school taxes are about 52% of our property taxes. So if you're looking at around a $9,000 property tax bill, half of that, $4,500 out of $9,000, is just for the school. So it's an enormous amount of money that we're paying for a school that we really just want better results. We're not trying to burn it down, we just want to improve it. Why? For the product, for the children. In order to get a better result for our money, we just want to be able to improve the product.
Right. So now, if you can sum up in, say, 30 seconds, okay, what actually this bill can do, and
Yeah, I believe.
how it's going to help us.
Yeah, I believe this bill will empower parents to take back schools, reduce taxes, and treat each child to the education that they rightfully deserve that we're paying for. It's fair funding, better education, competition creates a better product.
Absolutely. And that's for all in no matter what
All.
district and
Absolutely.
area that you're in.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'd like to thank Mr. Bader Carmine for coming on.
Thank you, my
Our
pleasure.
show tonight, Professor of Sociology at Morris County Community College. And to our viewers, I'd like to thank you for watching us tonight, and stay tuned